All right, let's relax and start. Close our eyes and together we'll take 6 slow, deep, relaxing, full breaths deeply into the bottom of the lungs and letting go of all tension on each exhale. And as we relax our bodies and our minds, we notice that there is a peace that is always present, and we invoke this peace into greater and greater awareness in our minds and our bodies. And we picture ourselves on top of a beautiful mountain in the center of a circular grove of trees. And we notice that inside the center of our circular grove blazes forth this bonfire. And it's a huge bonfire, and it's a golden bonfire, and it's the bonfire of perfect love and perfect trust. And it lights up the grove with the same sacred golden light, and it burns away everything that is unlike itself, leaving us pure and feeling sacred and connected and at peace. And for this, we are very grateful. Together we all say, blessed be.
Blessed be.
So I was talking with somebody today, in fact, and they said, do you, we were talking about back in the day. We're both in the craft, and we're talking about back in the day. I mean, we've been at this for decades now, right? So, do you remember, do you remember, we're doing one of those, the old days kind of conversations, which are fun sometimes. I don't do a lot of that. I'm always pretty present in the now, but it is fun to kind of go back and remember from whence you've come, and he was talking about, some stuff, and I was talking about some stuff, and he said, oh yeah, well, I remember when so-and-so did this, and I said, yeah, boy, I was a jerk back then. If that would have happened now, I would have handled it so differently because of who I am now, but that was the best I knew how to do. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, I know. He was telling me the same thing. He said, do you think that we are still doing some good, that we did still some good? And I said, yeah. And I said, and this is why I think so. I said, knowing both of us the way I do, even though our character defects, our weaknesses were what they were at the time, and we have them now too, obviously, I do know that we were committed to our highest good, that we were committed to the path, that we were invoking that higher self, or that superconscious mind. So what I've noticed is that those people in those situations were really necessary for us to be dealing with at that time, because our superconscious mind was able to utilize our weaknesses in order to make a difference. That person wouldn't have heard it in my kind way now, but they needed, for whatever reason, to be around the temper, the one with the anger, like me, which is what I was back then, and I wasn't, you hear the legendary stories of Ariel and his temper. It wasn't all the time, but it had its moments. I definitely had my moments when I could just fry you, and I didn't mean to. It just was the way it worked, But those people don't come around anymore, and the reason why is because they don't. It's not appropriate. You know what I mean? So yes, I am very certain that when we are connecting on a regular basis with our source, whatever you want to call it, whatever you use, whatever terms work for you, father and mother, spirit guide, higher self, God and goddess, all of that works, that you are not only growing spiritually, but all of your weaknesses can be utilized for good. All of the stuff that you look back and cringe about actually had its purpose then too. And that's a nice way to look back and say, yeah, I'm glad I'm not like that anymore, but I'm glad that I was able to be of some use, rather than just being a jerk for no reason, you know?
Maybe you were a jerk. Maybe you were just matter-of-factly, or in my perspective of what you're telling me, is you're just matter-of-factly and perhaps delivering the facts, and it was their conscious or their psyche or whatever that's heard the truth and went, I don't need it, and pointed back at you.
That's possible, but at the same time, I do know that I flew off the handle. But it was necessary, because they wouldn't have heard. I mean, you know, I'm not justifying my negative behavior, you know, because that needed to be changed and it has been changed. But my point is that you don't have to necessarily look back at all of the mistakes that you've made and say, ugh. You know, you can look back and say, I know that only good came from that, because I was in harmony with my higher good. So a lot of good came out of that. We were talking about World War II, right? Yeah, it was a horrible thing, but some good came out of it. It wasn't all, you know, it wasn't all for nothing, you know? So I thought that was a really powerful way of holding perspective on the past, you know, about releasing ourselves from our past is not only you know, like the typical making amends and look, you know, all that kind of stuff, but how can you celebrate it too? How can you celebrate your weaknesses? Has nothing to do about what I wanted to talk about tonight, but I thought it was interesting. I thought it was an interesting little thing. What I did want to talk about tonight, though, was I don't know if anybody does herbal medicine or anything like that, but there's a type of, or it's also in cannabis medicine, which is a type of herbal medicine. It's homeopathic medicine. There's a concept called microdosing, and that's where you take a small amount of whatever you need, just the bare minimum amount to create a healing response, but without getting any side effects. Mm-hmm. So, and that especially with herbal medicine, chemical medicine, not so much, but with herbal medicine, things can be dose dependent. Like certain herbs, if you take a small amount, they might make you sleepy. But if you take a larger amount, they might actually make you speedy. And if you take a bigger amount, they might make you hallucinate. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Things like that. So that it's not only what it is, but because there's so, you know, nature is so balanced that those different compounds in the herb are dose related, depending on what. Well, I was thinking, well, so is magic. Magic is dose related, and you can microdose your magic, and I call it micro magic. You know, I like micro magic because when you take your, well, we all have. Do we have paper? Do you have paper? No. Can you get a little piece? Because I want to do a little something and show you what I'm talking about.
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued.
Paper and anything else?
Probably a writing implement, since the finger doesn't work on the paper so much, unless you got a pen or something.
A little flashback.
Back in the old days.
No, I was at the table 2 minutes ago. My flashback. I'm gonna write it down.
Well, I was gonna say with your earlier comment was that I always think about, like, I don't live in regret for the past, because I mean, sure, there are things maybe I would have done differently, but if I'm satisfied with who I am now, then I have to celebrate all of those past mistakes.
Right,
I couldn't be this person if I hadn't been a hot-tempered or whatever.
I agree.
Yeah.
Can't get it.
You can't get it off? I'm sorry, I'm so bad today.
I'm sorry there.
I'm getting it off for you, don't worry.
I can get it off. I can get everything off.
No,
I'm a hot-blooded Aries.
I must be a cool Plutonian then, I guess.
Okay, so let's just take a clean sheet of paper, if you can spare one, and I want you to write down your 5, try to get 5 biggest things that you want in life. The biggest things that you want in life. Just try to, your biggest desires. If you can, do 5. If not, do like 3. If they don't roll right off, that's fine. If you have to think about it, you can just do a few or whatever. The big, big, big things.
I mean, it's okay if they sound a little esoteric? Or?
Totally.
Okay.
The bigger, the better, though. The macro dose is what we want here.
Okay.
Okay, and then also I want you to put your 5 biggest problems that need to be resolved. The biggest challenges in this lifetime that need to be resolved. Like the biggies. And if you can't do 5, that's fine. Just do a few. Just I want to show you just what I'm talking about. Sometimes those are easier. Because they're a little bit more visceral. Okay, we kind of good with that. You can go back and finish that. Now I want you to make a list of the smallest little things that you'd like to see, to be, do, or have this over the next week or two. Just small. Like I want to get my gas tank filled. I want to buy some thread. I want little teeny itty bitty things that are almost inconsequential that you want to see happen. Small, tiny, teeny, tiny kingdom. Anybody ever see that Emily Litella? Tiny kingdom.
But it sounds interesting.
It's very funny. Oh, I'm dating myself, Emily Litella. Oh. Okay, and then when you're done with that, just a few, 3 to 5 small little problems that need to be resolved. And little, like the scuff on my shoe, the hangnail that needs to get clipped, my hair color needs to be changed, my roots need to be done. Little itty bitty problems, tiny problems that you want to get done this week. And they may be this, there may be crossover. That's okay with the 2 lists. I'm just trying to get the pump primed. Okay, and I'm sure you can see that there's a small difference in your emotion when you look at the small list of problems, the tiny problems versus the macro problems. There should be a small little difference as far as what you think is possible, what you think is going to be a lot of work, what you think causes you anxiety. And the same may be true, and I'm not saying it has to be this way for you, but for many of us it is, with the good things too, the things that you want. Some of those goals, if they're big ones, may seem like, I don't know how this is ever going to happen, whereas the little ones, you know that you could just do it. You could just go get it done. You could just get in the car and go do it, right? What if you started a daily practice on the micros and you kept a list of the macros? What if you kept a long list of your goals, be do have, of the big ones, small ones, all of those, and everything you wanted? Keep it in your brain, go over it regularly, but what you do as far as daily practice on magic is the small ones.
Goals or problems or both?
All of it. So if you are going to be solving one little problem magically, get it off your micro list. If you're going to be doing a spell on obtaining a new item, get it off your micro list, not your macro list. What happens in my experience is that energy flows upstream in your list. And a lot of that stuff on your list starts to resolve itself because your mind is constantly thinking in terms of success and magical power and magical effectiveness and regular daily practice rather than
Your affective filter is being lowered. So
yes, your sphere of influence is expanding rapidly because everything you work on is successful. Your deep mind doesn't understand big problem versus little problem. It's your conscious mind that knows the difference between big problems and little problems. So it doesn't know that you could easily go to the store on your own and get that dozen apples. It's just doing the spell for the dozen apples. And when you go to the store and get it, it says, "Oh, the spell worked."
We did it.
Yeah. And so it says our magic always works. And if it also takes note that he or she seems to be taking these things off this paper, this list. Therefore, everything that goes on one of these lists must be something that we will eventually get. Little by little, what is your little list, your micro list, without your even thinking about it, starts to have bigger things on there because they don't seem that big anymore. You feel pretty confident. You feel pretty sure. And that's called faith. You know, when we say the witch's pyramid, faith, imagination, will, and secrecy, that faith is everybody's stumbling block at first, I've noticed. And even later, you know, that's, believing that they can do it. What I've noticed is that where people get messed up is they start hoping. And hoping is death to magic. And people think of hope as such a positive emotion, and it's not. It's so negative because it puts all of your power outside of yourself. That I hope, and the deep mind says, "Wait a minute, I will," is what we do. So if you start saying, "I hope," then it gets confused. Well, what do you want? You want me to not work on this, or do you want me to work on this? You know, and if it's confused, then it gives you nothing. And if you don't give your deep mind specific tasks to work on every single day, it will create anyway, but it will create by rote based on whatever's in there already, based on your beliefs. So not only are you getting what you want, but you're training your mind that you only want it to create what you tell it to, rather than just whatever. Because I was trying to tell somebody, tell a class, I wasn't trying, we were discussing this in one of my non-denominational classes that I teach, that the magic is just normal. It's just how life works. It's just how, you're magical all the time. Everybody is. You're constantly creating. That's what you do. That's what we all do. But a lot of times we don't realize that we are creating by default. We're creating based on what we were taught, based on our belief systems, based on all those those blueprints that we were given. And when you do a micro magic, you're giving yourself this power that you wouldn't have if you were trying to work on really big stuff. Yeah, because there's nothing to thwart it. There's no belief system that comes up that says you can't have this, because of course you can have this. Mm-hmm. And then when you start including magic with it, and it doesn't have to be, it can be, you can pull out all the tools. But see, what happens is if you pull out all the tools on a micro, then it's like, well, when they pull out the tools, it's successful. But if you only pull out all the tools on the big thing, then you're telling your deep mind, the tools are out, we must be in trouble.
Yeah, we've done it.
Yeah, I probably won't work. It's probably too big for us, So do big things. I remember once I did a spell on something, like I was being very I don't remember what it was. It was something like getting a new chain or something that I could easily afford. But I made such a big pompous deal out of it, just like, and now the chain comes to me, made such a big spell out of it. And it felt really good when I got the chain. It really felt extra good. And what's really cool, say you're talking about produce, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to go get some peaches. I'm going to go and get some peaches. So let's do a spell on peaches. And you don't make it to the store to get the peaches that day, but somebody brings you peaches that you didn't even know that they had peaches, stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the power of the small, it's fascinating, and I think that the reason why it works so well is because we have a miswiring in our makeup based on probably being told that magic is, make believe, and it's not real. From the first time I heard that, I remember thinking, fuck you. When I was little, I'm like, oh, I don't think so. But that a lot of times so we'll go to magic when it's something big, mm-hmm. but then we don't really believe in it. Like we say we do.
We don't put the faith.
We don't, yeah. But if you start doing it on the small things, you have such a different experience. And I think it was Eli that was talking about how if you start small on little things that you want, that when it comes time later, when you're called on to do big workings, it won't be a problem because you'll have trained yourself how to do it, right? So we were talking in the same conversation about worship, how people, like they'll say,
like daily practice.
Well, the idea of worship in religion. So worshiping a higher power, worshiping a god, worshiping a goddess, whatever. And I said, isn't it interesting how a lot of us, the way we worship is, if people didn't know, if people just didn't know who we were, and they looked at what we do and we call it a religion, it's just like, I want a new television set, I want a new car, I want a new job. I mean, they wouldn't understand the sacredness behind that. Mm-mm. But I think that that's so much better than arbitrarily just giving, allegiance to some deity up in the sky that you don't really understand. But to look at worship as being something very practical, as like solving problems and getting your goals and becoming at one with your heart's desires, so that you recognize that those are sacred, and that if there is a God, that's where God would live, is in the things that make you want to get up out of bed in the morning and go do things. So there's two kinds of goals, like in which we discovered here. There's the goal of problems that you want to solve, and then there's the goals of things that you want to achieve. And sometimes they will cross. And a lot of times, if you can, in your different lists, what you can do is, you'll find that there is an answer to the problem that you're seeking to solve on the list of be do have. If this were here, this problem wouldn't exist. Does that make sense? So like, I want to pay off all my debts over here. That's my problem, right? I want to increase my income to blah 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 blah. Is my goal, is my desire. Well, if you had that desire, this problem wouldn't exist. You know what I'm saying? Necessarily. It might. You might just have more spending, but whatever.
And it would be periodic.
Yeah.
Not always in the negative.
Right. So you can understand that you have some desires that seem like you want things, but those desires are also showing you how to solve things. Mm-hmm. And they're there to be followed. But if you can break them down into tiny, easy little nuggets that you can do a spell on Monday for this one, you can do a spell on Tuesday for this one, spell on Wednesday for the, and you get to the point where you don't, on that daily practice, it doesn't have to take more than 15, 20 minutes, it's no big deal.
I've come to that with the mini candles, because I like to work with fire.
Yeah.
And so I anoint. I write my little desire.
Yes.
I anoint my little candle. It takes about 20 minutes for the candle to burn, which is about the amount of time I really can stay focused and present.
Sure.
So when someone comes in and buys 4 different gigantic glass candles
Right.
to put around their...
Because it's important.
It's like I'm thinking to myself, if I was going to do that, I would just, me. I would have a small little candle and
just
focus.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
It just occurred over time.
Right. It's just
to be bigger,
so much easier to just live magically rather than running to your altar to do this big operation. It's just like when somebody's learning an instrument. 15 minutes of practice every day is a lot better than once every couple weeks, really practicing for a long period of time. It's
just like
real different.
Cleaning your house. Someone asked me when I was a homemaker, how do you clean, you maintain this household by yourself while your husband works? And I'm like, well, but I don't clean the whole house in one day. It's bathroom day. It's
Absolutely.
Like anything that you can.
It's manageable.
Yeah.
It's manageable, right? So, but when you start thinking in terms of that, what you said, like bathroom day and rug day and all of that stuff, with your other goals, your mind says this is doable. This is doable. And since we know that these goals constantly get met, then these big goals are being met too, because the deep mind doesn't understand order of difficulty. It doesn't get the difference between real and false. That's why visualization works. It doesn't get the difference between it's just a movie and not just a movie. You're still going to get scared no matter how many times you tell yourself it's just a movie. Even on set. Even on set, sometimes people get freaked out. And they see that the cameras are there and they know that it's not really happening, but they still get freaked out because it's such a good performance. Because the deep mind doesn't get it. It doesn't have that. That's why I always say be careful about how you make jokes. The deep mind does not have a sense of humor. It doesn't understand sarcasm. It doesn't understand just kidding. So when you say little self-deprecating things or little things about, this is, life is hard and then you die, those kinds of things, it will take you at your word. And when you catch yourself saying those kinds of things, you have to just say, no, I'm not gonna indulge in that because I know the power of my mind. I know the power of my deep mind. The deep mind doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you believe. It doesn't give you what you want, it gives you what you believe. It gives you what you have faith in. It gives you what you are expecting. And if you want to know what you're expecting, notice what you're feeling. Feeling trumps thought every single time. They always tell us in New Age thought that your thoughts create your emotions because thoughts are less dense vibration than emotion, but they have it wrong. Yeah. Fire came first, then water, then air. Mm-hmm. Air is a byproduct of water and fire. So the desire versus the emotion interacts to become the thought or the plan. So trying to rationalize away your fears doesn't work. You have to face your fears. You have to face your fears.
What you feel tells you what you believe.
It does. If you want to know what your faith is, there's no such thing as a faithless person. Everybody has faith in something. Faith is an aspect of consciousness. What do you feel? What do you have faith in? What are you feeling? What are you expecting? It tells you what's on its way. So when somebody said, "Well, I'm thinking really good thoughts, but I'm feeling very scared," I'm like, "Well, then something scary is on its way." It's just that simple. Something scary is on its way. But the good news is that you don't have to feel scared. The reason why you're feeling scared is because you're avoiding feeling scared. You're running away from it. You're trying to tell yourself, no. Yeah, you're feeling scared. Look at your fear. What are you afraid of? Write it out.
You believe there's something to be scared of.
Something's, yeah, so what are your beliefs? So just regurgitate, write that shit down, write it all out there, get it objectified on a piece of paper, then you know what you're creating, and then you can turn those things into those micro-manageable goals.
It's little, sometimes they're so little, it's, one that I noticed sort of just over time was when I went from being covetous to being happy.
Yeah.
For people who had something good happen.
Yes.
It's like, now it's pretty much all the
Normal.
time.
Now it's your normal way because
normal.
you've retrained yourself.
Right, it's
Right.
like...
Right, yeah, good for you.
Good, yeah.
Well, and the first time somebody told me, you know that the more you covet, the less you'll have, right? And I'm thinking, really? Yeah, but if you want them to succeed and you're happy for them to succeed, you're telling your deep mind that you get that too.
Which I really hadn't put it that far, but
I didn't realize that for the longest time.
The good feeling.
Yes.
The good feeling was to be able to enjoy for
Right.
someone else's success.
But the
It feels
good, so now, like we said, the deep mind doesn't understand the difference between real and imagined. So if you're imagining something good happening for yourself in the midst of this fear, right? It can't understand the difference between the two. But it'll start to wonder, well, what are we afraid of then? If something good is happening. Well, what happens is if you look at the fear and you feel the fear and you feel that or whatever the uncomfortable emotion is, you'll recognize that there is no such thing as fear. There is no such thing as any negative emotion. It's just a resisting of the energy that you're experiencing. So if you don't resist it, and you let go and you relax into it, then that fear has to recalibrate and become something that's true, because fear is not real. Fear is a tensed emotion. It's so when there's a free flowing emotional body and that is dammed up, that's called fear. But the fear is not there. There's no such thing. It's a damming up of the free-flowing emotional body. So if you let go of the tension and you let the emotion flow, you'll recognize that the fear was never there to begin with. That what you were calling fear was actually a holding on or a damming up or a distortion of the free-flowing experience of that emotion. So all you have to do, really, when you're feeling those negative emotions is not resist them, first of all, because that makes them stay. It gives them a reality. But if you go through them and you relax into them, you recognize that they're not really there, because underneath that is the same peace that always existed. And if you can get to the other side of that emotion, then you know what's on its way. It has a real flow to it, and that way your images that you're giving your deep mind will have the same flow. But if you start putting, like I said, those images in there with that dammed up fear, then it's like your deep mind is saying, okay, they want this, but they want it in a really bad way. They want it to come in a really scary way. It doesn't understand. Okay, they want money, but they're afraid, so they want something scary with money. Got it. And then you wonder what happened. Well, I did my spell. Yeah, but you didn't really do your spell. You did a spell about fear with money. And so you got a lot of money fears come up to and so
what
that's
would you call the opposite of fear? Courage?
Love, flow, relaxation, peace, all of that stuff. There's two emotions, relaxed and tense.
Right.
So, and then from those two emotions, only one is real, and that's the relax, because the tension is something you added to it. The tension doesn't exist. The tension doesn't you can't relax out of peace. You can't let go of peace, but you can let go of tension.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's real in that it's something that you're experiencing, but it's not real in that it's something that you added to the emotion of love or relaxation, whatever you want to call it. So, if you're feeling fear, it's not that you're doing something bad, it's not that you're doing something wrong, it's just that it's something needs your attention. That's all. And so if you can, again, get down to the small, the microdosing magic. Okay, what am I afraid of? Okay, so write it all out. I'm afraid the world's ending. I'm afraid I'm going to prison. I'm afraid that everybody's going to die. I'm afraid that I'm going to get leprosy. I'm afraid, all of this craziness that's just, most of it is silly.
Right.
Huge, big things that you've been carrying around. That luckily you've got also levels of consciousness in there that are stopgaps that those things can't come true. There's a you have a lot of things that you create by rote through fear, but you also have a lot of things that are in place that are like, no, we're not
Homie, don't play that.
yeah, homie, don't play that. Exactly. So you is as bad as we can be, we are also equally very good at certain things. So but where there is resistance to getting what we want, it's not that we don't deserve it, or, oh, well, let's just not think so big, or, oh, well, I guess, it's just not my lot in this life. The other way of looking at that is, well, let's take it down to a smaller bit, to a smaller little bite-sized morsel that we can digest more easily. And the same thing goes with the big fears, like once you see those big fears on paper, most of them look silly, but what is something that you're afraid of? Well, something that I'm afraid that, like, maybe they'll foreclose on the house. Okay, well, that's a legitimate fear if you're not making your payments. Could happen. Yeah.
File default.
But you know what I'm saying? But avoiding that fear is not going to make them not do that.
No.
But relaxing into that fear and recognizing it for what it is, and then saying, now, what can I put on my goal list? Well, I want to pay off my house. I want to have my debts paid. Well, what's something you could do today? How much do you have to pay toward that today? Maybe $5. Well, I'm going to do a spell that I give a $5 payment to whatever today. That's huge. That's huge. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal.
It's better than hiding in the corner, shaking.
Well, it's better than that. It's that you are, when you turn the ship like this, you don't notice the ship turning right away because it's so big. But it does turn. It does turn, and pretty soon it's where you want it to be. So one little turn toward where you want to go is much better than straight ahead into the iceberg. You know what I'm saying? So if you can understand the power of the micro, and it's fun to say, how small can I go? How tiny can I get this? Because like with the microdosing in herbal medicine, if you go too small, it may have only an energetic, like with a lot of the homeopathic stuff, it may have a very subtle energetic nuance to it, but it doesn't really address the symptom. So you may have to go up a little bit. And with microdosing, with herbal medicine, to pull it out of the homeopathic, you might want to go up just to where it's addressing the symptom only, not pull it out of the homeopathic, but out of the energetic, realms, and then where it's addressing the symptoms, and then say no more. Or like with the cannabis medicine that's so big today, a lot of people don't want to get high. They don't want to, I don't know why, but no, I'm just kidding. A lot of people don't like being high, and that's fine. But they still want the benefits of the cannabis medicine, right? And there's all kinds of different cannabis medicines that they can take. Some of it doesn't have psychoactivity, but some of what they need is going to, if they have enough of it, they're going to get high. So what they get to do is they push that up right until they get some sort of psychoactivity, and they pull it just behind that. So they can get the anti-inflammatory, the anti-nausea, all of the anti-cancer stuff, all that stuff that they're taking it for, but they don't like being high. And then and then they know where they are. Then if their symptoms return, then they have to bring it back up again. And they just play this back and forth bit, like I just under the level of psychoactivity, but still getting the medicinal benefits that I need. And that works very, very well. And that's not just for cannabis. That's with a lot of herbal medicines that have, in herbal medicine, the high of cannabis would be called a side effect. That wouldn't be called, for most people that recreationally ingest cannabis, they're going for the side effect. But for the medical person, that would be called a side effect. That would become an undesirable side effect. They can't work, they can't do the things that they want to do, they don't like the feeling, all of those things. That's a side effect. Those side effects exist in all of herbal medicine. So you learn how to get the best relief of symptoms with no side effects. And the same thing you do with magic. We want just the amount of magic necessary to create the healing response, but we don't want to go so big with the magic that we have the side effect of whatever it happens to be, opening up too much of a fear, maybe thinking that you're going for too much too fast, maybe not getting your shot of faith because you're I mean, I see that all the time with people that do magic. They go for these big grandiose things and then they fail because they have no faith to back it up. And so what I always say, start small and then grow. But now I'm thinking for a lot of people, stay small and get your list bigger. Stay small and do it every single day. Can you imagine if you had one little grain of rice that you put on a pile every day, how much rice there would be after a couple years in that pile, right?
Feeding people.
You'd be feeding people.
Yep.
And same thing with, anything. Like these people that don't do any kind of fitness because they have it in their minds they have to work out 90 minutes or this or that. I'm thinking, okay, well, what happens if you just did a couple sit-ups every day? You'd be so much farther along doing that than saying, I'm not going to do anything until I have enough time to do it the way it's supposed to be.
Well, I can't start lifting until I have a good 3 to 5 days to lift it. And I'm like,
right. And I need the right equipment, I need the right gym, I need the right trainer, I need the right clothes, and they do that with magic. I need the right incense, I need the right tools, I need the right candles, I need the right, it's like, it's totally a time waster. No, get your lists. You don't need anything more than pen, paper, and your mind. And then anything else you want to add to it is great. But write out what you want to do and have. I was talking also with some people that if you're in crisis, that's when you want to really make your goals.
oh yeah.
If you're in crisis, you should have thousands of goals written out. Big, small, little, be, do, have, now, tomorrow, the next day, 10 years. Focus your mind constantly on what you want. And that's how you're going to get out of crisis. And then what happens is people start using this stuff and they become extremely successful in an area and they stop doing the stuff that got them successful. They stop doing their magic, they stop doing their goals, they stop doing all of that stuff because a lot of times they were able to create it, but it was so much work. And now they think, no, I don't have to do so much work. Well, if you were micro-magicking, all along, it would never have been so much work, and you could have gotten just as much done, and it would have been nice and easy, and you'd still be doing it, and your results wouldn't be going out because you stopped practicing, right? And that's not to say that you can't do macro magic. Absolutely, there's a place for that, but I'm just talking about a daily practice. There's people that only do magic every so often for something big. No. That's not how a musician practices. A musician practices every single day. So do your scales every day and just do one little thing a day. Pretty soon, for you, when you do this, if you look at you versus a new student, what your little micro things are going to be huge compared to theirs. The person that's working on Beethoven sonata, this one little section, that they're working a little bit every day just to make it better. To somebody that's just starting out playing the piano, they're thinking, oh my gosh, that's so hard. But to this person, that's just a micro thing that they're working on a little bit every day. Same thing with our magic. For you, your things may seem to a beginner in this, may seem like if they were able to they would never know, but to look in on you, they'd think, wow, I'd never be able to be working on that kind of magic. But for you, it's going to be just a real simple thing because it's more about the daily practice. Isn't that great? And it gets things so stress-free. And you're stressing out over something, you're trying to work on too much at once. That's all.
Stop talking about me.
Yeah.
Well, but and the thing is what happens is you tell people this and they think, yeah, but my problem is really big. Like, well, that's because you keep saying that it's really big. So what's the smallest little thing that you could work on that problem today? Now, if we did a bunch of small things every single day, your problem would be history in a week. Whereas if you keep fretting over it, it's going to get bigger by next week.
Like that laundry pile.
Yeah, exactly. You don't stop wearing clothes. But if you did a load every day, you wouldn't have to do a whole day of laundry. Right? Maybe 2 loads a day because you still have the new clothes that you're wearing. But you know what I'm saying. Same thing with cleaning your house, one little thing at a time. I do that, like I'll do that just with house cleaning at home. I'm like, okay, I have one day off every week. I'm going to be home. You know what's wrong with our society? We have these days of the week that have for generations been named after our solar system. And Monday is the first day to go to work, and that is the day of the moon and home. The first thing I did when I was self-employed, I'm taking Mondays off. That's my day at home because that's sacred to the moon. I want to be home on that day doing nothing but home stuff. That's when I do my cleaning. That's when I do my stuff, right? So on Mondays when I'm home, that's when I take one little thing that's going to get organized. Not a big thing, one little shelf, one little cabinet, one little itty-bitty thing. So one day every week, I get one little thing organized. By the end of a year of me doing that, our home is so perfectly in order. But there's no way I would have been able to be joyous about doing that if it would have been big projects.
Weekend,
No, I would have been miserable doing that. And not done a very good job because I'd have gotten too tired, in midstream, and thrown shit out that I regretted. It's good to throw stuff away, but when you're in one of those modes where it's like you've been going at it for too many hours, you're not thinking straight, and you start throwing stuff away that you shouldn't be.
And then you're going,
oh, I totally did that.
If I'd only microdosed my housework, everything would have been fine.
Full lunatic mode, right?
Right, so the power of microdosing or micromagic. Micromagic is so huge. And that's all I really had to talk about, but isn't that great?
yeah.
Yeah.
Magic is so huge.
What's that?
You said
Micromagic is so huge. It is. I know, it's great.
That is.
Any other questions or comments on that little gem? I know it's a small one, but I love it.
I'm inspired.
Oh, good.
I write things, but now I just kind of want to take it and work on it a little bit each day.
And the other thing too is if you're like getting into meditation or first key kind of stuff like that, set a timer on your iPhone or an egg timer or whatever for 1 minute, and then when it goes off, your meditation's over. Even if you want to do it more. And then when that gets comfortable, then you can expand it to 2 minutes. And over time, you can get up to 20 minutes very, very easily. But if you start with 20 or 30 minutes, you don't do really well because you're too bored with it. But if you're getting into it and you do it on a micro level, little by little, the trick is even if you want to go farther, don't let yourself. I tell them that when they're practicing music too. Just like if they don't practice well, you give yourself 5 minutes this week. You set your iPhone, and after 5 minutes, you're done practicing. Even if you want to keep going, you have to stop. And that makes one eager to get practicing because they know that they want to do more. But
do it.
But if it becomes a chore, then you automatically rebel. Automatically
they set
rebel.
precedence for it being successful, like you said,
Absolutely.
spell work.
Absolutely. Spells are very, very powerful, and people banter that word around a lot spell this and magic that. Spell. It's very powerful. It's very sacred. I mean, it really can make a huge difference in our lives. But when your mind is all awash with too much conflict about what that means, and there's no like you said precedent for success, it loses its meaning. But if you pull it way back and it's just something like that's almost silly in its manageability, it's like, okay, I'm going to do a spell for paying my phone bill. Okay, I'll do that, or whatever. It's a small little thing. It's amazing. It's amazing what opens up, and a lot of times if you're I used to say start small and then expand, but I think it's really interesting just to give yourself maybe 3 months of I'm not going to expand. I'm going to keep micro. How micro can I be? Maybe and question yourself. Did I try to do too much on that spell? Could I have broken that down even more? How could I have broken that in half? And because then especially if you journal at all, if you keep any kind of record, it doesn't have to be a big long thing, but if you keep any record and you actually go back and read your journals, and a lot of times people don't do that, go back and you read your journals and look back and see what micro used to mean to you versus what micro means to you now. It's just like when I was talking to one of the Segerstrom people about something. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's right. That house doesn't mean the same to you as it would to somebody else, because that's your sixth house. To me, underwear is the same thing as houses are to you. I mean, it's just this, it's like, it's just all relative, it's all very relative. And so what's micro to me now is not the same as what it was before, but it's just so manageable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it happens so fast. Do it like this, try it this way. Do it for, say, 3 months. Give yourself a quarter, You're going to start to do micro magic only for 3 months. And really be on your case that you're going to be like, I'm only giving myself 1 day off a week. And what I used to do when I first started getting into this is like I would do it via the days of the week, so that I would say, okay, well, today is Monday, which micro thing is under the moon? Today's Tuesday, which micro thing is under Mars? Today's Wednesday, which micro thing is under Mercury? One little thing every single day, a spell a day. Not 7-day spells, a spell a day of the smallest, silliest little thing that I really do want, or I need, or a little problem. I mean, it's real, but it's small. After 3 months, see how much shit you've cleaned up in your life that you didn't even think was possible. And how much you've accumulated that you've always wanted that you never thought was possible. Just by saving 1 penny here, or, you know what I mean? It's just, everything's small.
So,
Yeah.
spell a day. Something small. I need to go to the store and get whatever it is that I need to get.
Okay.
Go do what I have to do tomorrow. I mean, am I going to sit down and light my 20-minute candle and have my relaxation and do what I would do in a spell? Or would I just kind of write on a piece of paper and burn it and call that my magic, or whatever it is to me, whatever my magic, however I cast my spell, and that's it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think you need to get some sort of system going, some sort of daily practice going. So for you, what that means is that your baseline, you need a baseline. So for me, the baseline is I'm going to relax my body. I'm going to envision my goal. It's pretty much like that. It's basically magic 101. And then as long as I've got that baseline going, I can add things to it. If I want to do candle magic, if I want to do a circle, if I want to use tools, if I want to use, incenses,
Bibliomancy.
all of that. Yeah, exactly. If I want to,
you could just go 3 keys and be.
You totally could, and that's easy. But but as long as you've got a baseline of daily practice, the other thing though is that you have to want it.
Yeah.
It can't just be arbitrary. It's got to be something you really want. But what little things don't? I mean, we have all kinds of little things that we want. I wanted a little fakakta thing from a store the other day, and I'm like, I could see myself having that. I could just draw that to me. I could just draw it into me.
I'm on with the whole silly thing, because believe me, a lot of things I think are silly. And one thing you mentioned was trimming your toenail.
Yeah.
However, to me, practicality is it's easier for me to go and trim my toenail than it would be to have a whole magic practice to trim my toenail.
Right, but had you done your now again? What is it? Something you desire? Then maybe that. If it's not something you desire, then if you don't have any desire for it, then it's not worth it.
I haven't trimmed this damn nail in a week, and every time I go to bed, I think about it. So I'm serious about this.
So then you do desire it.
I think
and why
about
don't you do magic on that then?
That's why I'm bringing up something so.
But and then see what happens. You'll either be compelled to trim it, or somebody will say, "Hey, have you ever gotten a pedicure? I'm practicing for my license." Or somebody would say, I'll go to pedicures today. You never know. It could happen in an odd way. And I know a lot of people hearing this will think this is the silliest thing I've ever heard, but they don't understand how it works. They don't understand the power of...
And part of that, I don't mean to interrupt, but part of that is that in so many cultures and in so many different worldviews, we're taught to think that prayer and magic has to be for feeding the hungry and huge, grandiose, altruistic, esoteric things, as opposed to, I'd like trim toenails.
Yeah, the thing is if you can't do magic for something simple to make your life work, you're not going to be of any use in world hunger. It's not going to happen. It's just the same as being as the music. If you can't play the music when you're practicing at home, you're not going to be better in the orchestra. You might be able to hide better in the orchestra, but you're not going to be of any use to the orchestra. You're not going to be contributing anything to the orchestra. So that's how I look at this. This is scales. This is just scales. And when you're a musician, you learn to love your scales because your scales make you a really great player and a really great musician. So this is the same thing for witches. It's our scales. But people, they get it wrong. Like you were saying, somebody was talking about that the other day about, no, you should only do magic for spiritual purposes.
Yeah, like it's blasphemous to do it for my new boots.
Yeah, and they actually told me that what I was teaching was black magic, and for one thing, I hate that word because it's racist. But black magic is for is anything for personal gain. And I said, well, okay, you can have it that way if you want to, but in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't want anything that you're selling here because I see how you're living your life. So how's that working for you? Whereas everybody I know that uses magic for, quote, personal gain, that has an understanding of where we are with it, are actually happier, healthier, productive people that are contributing to society. And they are the people that I would call on if we needed some big work, because I know they get results, whereas you, not so much. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. How are you supposed to practice? How are you supposed to practice if you don't have stuff to work on? How do you get better? If you just wait until some big thing is necessary, how do you have skill? I don't understand that at all.
I think that you wouldn't have.
It sounds like there's some hair shirts and stuff, in somebody's.
It's ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. They've just watched Charmed too many times because Charmed said you can't do magic for personal gain.
Channel 5.
But Charmed is not the craft. It's a fun show, but it's not real. That's not how we work. So anyway, I would recommend it. Just give it a shot. Give it a whirl. Dust off the wand and wave it over smaller things and see what you get. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing.
Good. We're coming up to Libra. I can actually work on some air stuff.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, let's do a quickie and we'll be done.
Mm-hmm.
And we see ourselves on our beautiful mountain inside of our circle with our bonfire blazing forth. And we recognize that we are very powerful people and that we know that there is no order of difficulty in what we are seeking to accomplish with our magic. Therefore, as we focus our abilities on that which we know is obtainable, that what is obtainable becomes very expanded right before our eyes. Thank you very much. Together we say, blessed be.
Blessed be.